steampunk genre, a genre that's actually unfamiliar to me. So can you tell me and anyone who's watching who's unfamiliar with the genre what it means to you?
To me, it's taking a historical setting and adding things to it that weren't originally there, and just it's a fantasy thing. It's about building your own world. You see people at steampunk conventions and things in all the fantastic costumes. To some people, it's all about the dressing up, and it's about the building your own costumes. To some people, it's building fantastic machines that look like they could have been built and used in a historical setting, but quite obviously aren't. Some people, it's about the art and creating fantastic pictures and models and sculptures, and other people, it's about stories. And for me, I love seeing all that stuff going on, but I'm all about the writing. And I perform. I've been a performer all my life, but I perform secondary. It's the writing. And so for me, it's just putting all those elements together and taking everything I want and sticking it in there, whether other people would think it goes in there or not. You know, you see people with these wonderful hats with all sorts of things stuck to them. Who's to say what's right or wrong and what can go on that and what can't? If you want to do that, then do it.
Right.
And it's making it work for you.
So
I think that's...
It sounds to me like you've taken a genre that people love, and you've taken your passion for writing, and you've put them together, and you've created this novel, which, you don't have to be interested in steampunk.
No, you don't. You really don't.
And it might get you interested in it.
It's like any book. Yeah. You might... I was talking about Christopher Fowler before. Now, Christopher Fowler, a lot of his books are detective books. I've not read anybody else's detective books. It's not the genre I like. I wouldn't watch detective films. It's not something that interests me. But because of the way that person writes and that person's vision, I'll read his stuff. And similarly with other books I will read, not just because I love all that sort of thing. It's how that person puts it together. And the thing with this book, it's not just for steampunk fans. It's for anybody who likes a story. You may like it, you might not.
So your book's coming out, remind me, 26th of November.
26th of November.
Are there other steampunk writers we can also get involved with and you'd like to read?
Have a look at Colin Edmonds, who I mentioned before. Colin, he's written a series, Smoke and Mirrors, about a Victorian magician. I loved that. I loved that series. There's another fellow, Toby Frost, that I've read, I think, 5 or 6 of his books, which is taking the whole thing in a slightly different vein, as if the Victorian Empire the British Empire under Victoria had carried on way, way past where it did. Another take on it. Again, who's to say which bit is right and which bit is wrong? Everybody adds their own bit. Those are 2 writers well worth having a look at.
So let's talk a bit about your previous writings, because this is your 6th book.
It is my 6th book, yeah.
This is your first venture, or your first foray into the steampunk world.
It is.
What kind of sandpits were you playing in before steampunk?
My first published book was a book called Down Among the Ordinaries. There's a poster for it up there on the wall.
Yeah.
That was, crikey, I think that was 2012 that was published. And it was a case of write what you know. And I knew about music because I'd been in bands for years and in the music industry, and so I wrote about a dried up, washed up musician who had been ripped off by his manager and by his solicitor and everybody around him. And it was a case of what happens when you've been very, very famous and then suddenly you're not.
Right.
How do you adapt? How do you get back into the world and try to be an ordinary person where everywhere you go, everybody knows your face? Can you go and do a car boot sale and nobody recognise you? That was the idea of that. And he's a bit of an anti-hero because he wasn't a very nice person. And as you go through the book, you discover the reason that everybody hates him, and everybody should hate him because he was a git. And I enjoyed writing that.
Well, let's go back to talking about The Giant Step. I'm going to say there's an element of a personal story in that novel. Is there anything personal in The Giant Step that comes directly from your life experience or your opinions or?
Yeah, I think my opinions come through it all the way. I know if my father reads this, that's all he'll pick up. He'll pick up political opinion and things, and say you're shoehorning your own anarchism in there. And yes, I probably am. I think whatever you do, you can build a character and you can try and keep that character distinct from the others. But I think my overall view of the world just kind of shape this world and all the characters within it.
And would you say that's something you generally do when you write your novels?
I think it's what I do when I do anything, to be fair. I'm an anarchist at heart, and I'm not like people think of an anarchist out there and smashing things up and destroying everything, because that isn't what an anarchist.
Actually, yeah.
It wasn't me. But that's, no, I mean, I understand I'm an anarchist at heart. I do believe in making it up as you go along, and respecting other people, and not doing things to other people that you wouldn't want done to yourself. That kind of anarchy, not following a rule that doesn't make any sense just because somebody wants to say it to you and appear big, that kind of thing. So that does inform everything I do. If you listen to the poetry and the songs, there is always this undercurrent there of sedition.
Well, talking of songs, your book has something that most books don't have, which is a theme tune.
Theme tune, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about why it's got a theme tune.
Why has it got a theme tune?
No, because that's a great thing, and how you came about with the idea, and what that conveys and how that complements the novel. If you were doing a film or a television program or something, you would automatically, it would have a theme tune. You wouldn't generally do that with a book, but these days, with things being promoted on social media and that kind of thing, why shouldn't you have a theme tune for a book? It's got to have that same pizzazz as the film has. And so when I came to be doing this book, I thought, it needs to have a theme tune. How can people listen to this theme tune? Is it going to be released on the same day?
Yeah. Well, actually, that will be out before.
Okay.
We've used it once already. Where are we now? We're recording this in September. The new video that's going to go with the same piece of music is all pictures of characters from the book.
Okay.
Say pictures of characters.
So it's a whole experience, isn't
it?
Well, if you read the book and you see the video and you hear the song, you're getting the full 360-degree picture of what you're trying to convey.
That's it.
I think what you should do is play the theme tune before you read the book,
yes,
right? And then play it at the end when you finish a chapter.
Exactly,
and then that'll get you more streams as well.
That's right. Yeah, keep doing that. It's a mixture. There's two songs that are put together. One is a very traditional Victorian pomp and ceremony thing. It's a with a marching band in the background, and then it goes into a far more punkier, rockier song about where the lyrics are about whether the 1960s moon mission was actually true or not, and then it goes back out into the bum 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 bum. It works.
It sounds really, really enjoyable.
I had a lot of fun doing that. A lot of fun.
It sounds like it, and that's if we're talking about music. You become instantly animated just talking about music. Like I said, it's a big part of your life.
It has been for a lot of years. Yeah, I don't do that much singing anymore. As I was saying to you before, the writing is it for me. And if I've written something and I want to get out and sing it, I'll go and do it because I want to put across what I'm doing. In the same way as the book, if we could have gone out, I'd be out reading the book to people because I like to perform stuff I've done. But it's not, for me, it's not performance for performance sake, it's performance for the art's sake of getting the
it's
stuff
like you've done it, you want people to hear it, right?
And we all think that if we've written it, we can perform it better than anybody else can. And I think you can to a degree.
Well, that's the case, and it belongs to you, so you should be the person to show it to the world. Let's talk about the anti-poet, which is half music, half poetry, I would say.
Poetry.
It's beat poetry. There's a name for it, Athena.
Yeah.
It's beat poetry.
It is, beat poetry is one of those things, how do you define it? Because you listen to something like a song like Peaches by the Stranglers.
Okay.
Now, if you listen to that, everybody thinks it's a song. It's a punk song from the 70s. It's beat poetry. Everything about that song is beat poetry. If you listen to anything that Ian Dury did, it beat poetry. They're not singing it. They're talking around the beat and around the rhythm. And that stuff, cadence, a lot of that stuff, you could... But then what do you say? They've got it registered as a song with the Performing Rights Society. It's a song, people know it as a song. It's got a tune to it. But I think that dividing line of what is a song and what is beat poetry, and then what is beat poetry and what is poetry, should we be defining those things and putting them into categories, or should we just say it's art?
Well,
listen to it, enjoy it.
Somewhat related to the topics we've been discussing, Whitey's on the Moon by Gil Scott Heron sounds like beat poetry now you mention it. Right?
A lot of things will. If you go back and listen to things that you've liked in the past and try and think now, is that a song, is it beat poetry? I think probably quite a lot of times you'd be thinking, that's actually beat poetry.
And again, I was going back to talking to you about the anti-poet, because primarily that's where I've seen you perform your art the most. Because you used to perform as the anti-poet at the shows you used to kindly let me tell my terrible jokes at.
You were great. The reason that we booked you again and again and again is because people asked you to come back because they thought you were funny. Your stuff was always great. That's why we liked you.
Well, your stuff is always great, and that's how I got into the anti-poet. And you travel around festivals and you perform. Again, have you been managing to do anything during this period of lockdown?
We had one gig. We were asked to do one gig, and initially I said no because I thought I don't really think we should be out at this time doing this stuff. And they said, "Oh, but it's all well distanced. The audience are going to be in little clusters around this cricket field." And yeah, they were. They were in little clusters of 4 or 5 people, but they were so far back from the stage. And what we're doing is comedy beat poetry, as you know. And being that far back and being grouped together in little huddles, they were distracted, and the tendency to sit and talk amongst yourself. If you were further forward and you could see the act and the act could intimidate you back, then that's different. But they were that far away, and there were stewards walking around with 2-metre long sticks, making sure that people didn't get too close and putting them between people.
Kind of kills the vibe, doesn't it? It's not very anarchist, is it?
No, and we're a double act. The anti-poet's a double act, and a lot of our show is me taking the rise out of him and the audience going on his side, and oh, poor little bass player, he's getting the mickey taken out of him all the time. And then as the show goes on, he turns around and gets one back over me, and everybody thinks, well, hey, that was spontaneous. No, it was rehearsed. But we couldn't really do that because he was way... No.
I don't know.
Once in a while we rehearsed. But he was way over the other side of the stage. I mean, how far did you have to be from me? And I was getting nothing back from the audience. Not to say they weren't going with it, because we had some nice comments afterwards, but they were so far away I couldn't read them.
And
as
the same
a comedy act, you need to read them.
It's the same it's all comedy. It's exactly the same as stand-up comedy. Even before lockdown, if I did a comedy club at a gig where people were at tables all sat apart from each other, I would just be livid.
It's hard,
I would be like, oh, I'm not going to enjoy this gig. And it is harder, and you have to work a bit harder, and you have to do other things to get their attention, and then you can do your material. And what you actually want is a proper canvas. Proper audience, all squashed together, nice low ceiling and all that stuff.
And we can't do that.
We can't do that anymore, but what we can do is access your art through your book, which is out on the 26th of November.
Do it that way. It's all in there. Yes. It's the same seditious, anarchist stuff in there. It's the same stuff that the anti-poet's doing, but it's the characters.
What connects your writing in this novel to the other things that you perhaps have done through the anti-poet or through the animations that you've written for?
What connects it? I think it's my voice.
Yeah.
I think it's as I was saying to you earlier, I've written other stuff, as you have. I wrote some poetry for a romance novel. A friend of mine, Carol Matthews, who writes romance novels, she had written this book, and one of the characters in it was a 15-year-old poet. And she said, I can't do poetry. Could you write the poetry for it? And I could, but it's got to come from that character. And normally I will write from my point of view. And suddenly I had to write from somebody else's point of view. And that was really difficult to do. I'm glad I did it because it stretched me. And I think we should always be trying to do things that stretch us. Because otherwise we do tend to think, right, we've got this book to write, we've got this play to write, we've got this song or this poem or this stand-up routine to write. And you go at it from the same angle. And I think sometimes it's nice to step out of that and do something in character. There are comedians out there on the circuit who just play characters, and all the comedy is around that character. And then you see them playing another character, and the comedy is completely different. I love that. That's really difficult to do, to have these two headspaces. And this material won't work with that character, but it will work with this one. And I find I'm doing that with everything I'm writing from my point of view. But the great thing with the novels is that I'm having to do it from the different perspectives of the different characters in there. And so I'm having to get into that headspace. I was writing a piece this week where I'm going from that character, and that comes up to a cliffhanger, and then it goes into that character's story, and that comes up to a cliffhanger, and then you go back to that character's bit, and that, you're building that tension as you go. And I found I couldn't get out of that character to get into that one. I'm going to have to jump a chunk here and write that whole sequence, and then go back and slot things in. And do the same with the other character, because I was too tied into that one.
It's like having multiple personalities, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And sometimes that works. Sometimes I think, I could really do with a break from that character because they really are getting on my wick now. I feel that I'm becoming that character on the inside, and I'm speaking like that character. I need to get out of that one into that one. And sometimes you just need to think, well, I've got to keep going in that one, otherwise I'm going to lose their speech pattern or something.
Victoria, Regina, Queen of Steam, punctilious proponent of the dream, our patron pushing boundaries of science and confounderies.